See, we're against all that. But even now, he has realized that's not actually where his audience is. So whether it's Craven,
I think he's a grifter. I think these guys are all grifters.
Right. Whether it's Craven or not, whether they're grifters or not, even Fuentes is now saying, he said it just like 2 days ago, you know what? Maybe we put aside the racism and the cruelty.
And how he's trying to position himself. That is his project. His project is to have the white race dominate over all other races. That's intrinsic to his core beliefs and what he advocates on the behalf of. If at a certain point he's like, well, we're going to tone down the racism. We'll make things a little less racist. I won't say the N-word as much anymore. See, I did it there. I'm a better man. Who gives a fuck? Enough evidence at this point. People have said, other men that they hooked up with him while they were working at BuzzFeed. The fact that he's, searched for gay cruises so much that, that actually pops up in his Google ads. There's a lot of evidence that you can point towards. Benny Johnson is, in fact, either a bisexual, pansexual, or closeted. One of the three. With Nick Fuentes, there's so much more evidence. There is so much more evidence that he is, again, either a homosexual, pansexual, bisexual, but he is certainly in the closet and does prefer the company of men, of cat boys, and femboys specifically. Those are his types. That's what he's into. And if that's not enough for you, there's the whole him broadcasting gay porn to his audience accidentally. He said that was an attack by Mossad, but it still is kind of, strange. I don't say this to shame anybody for, their love of cat boys or femboys. That's not what this is about, because the problem with Nick Fuentes is that because he's a Nazi, and he pumps out so much Nazi rhetoric and talks so much about Nazi shit, and a lot of it is usually homophobic. He obviously talks about how being gay is sinful, it's against God. He thinks gay people are created by watching pornography, which, for a man like him who's admitted on camera to watching pornography and also has broadcast gay pornography to his own audience, maybe that's how he feels it hurts him. I feel that that's probably a little bit more at the center of that, why he does what he does and why he says that watching porn turns you gay. That might be from firsthand experience. Maybe he's upset that he feels gay because he likes watching gay porn. I don't know. I can't fill in all the gaps, but if you want to watch the entire thing, go to youtube.com/@theserftv. It's up there right now. But I would be very sad to see if Cenk actually wants to start working with Nick Fuentes because he's a Nazi.
You were going to your communist nephew's house. I can't tell if you were memeing or if you were being serious. Have I been upgraded to communist?
Okay, actually, you tell me. I'm kidding. But so people are constantly calling you all sorts of names. You go to China, you love it over there. So what should we call you? What are you?
Whoa. You can't say you're memeing and it was a joke and then right out the gates be like, hey, I gotta be honest though, I got some questions. Nephew. You could have just asked him this at any other point, considering your family and see each other all the time. Our audience, which are definitely progressive leftists, they want to know if you're a full-blown communist and that you support the Chinese government and that you secretly work for the CCP. I'm not saying that because we in any way have really pivoted to the right and we, find more in common now with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Turning Point USA than we do with the left, those Sam Cedar types. But, you answer for me. Are you a commie?
I say I'm a socialist. I'm not like a self-described communist or anything, but I also say that I don't have an issue with people calling me a communist. I just think it's funny when people say that.
Then I got it right. Okay. I was playing around. Yeah, you're a socialist. God bless.
Yeah. But a lot of people have been saying that I'm a authoritarian communist. That's what they're saying. Well, not everybody. Some people say I'm a revisionist and therefore a social fascist, but those guys are the real commies. You know what I mean? That's the real Max left.
Okay, yeah. Luckily, I don't even know those folks.
They're in your replies, I suspect. Actually, they might have given up on you at this point.
Oh, yeah.
They yell at me all the time, though. Not that it matters. All right, I will keep calling you a centrist, lol. Yeah, people say I'm a centrist.
Well, the political spectrum has moved if you are a centrist. Although kind of, look, you backed Mamdani 200%. Mamdani's now bros with Trump. If that's not centrism.
It's the horseshoe. Yeah, by transited property, I'm homies with Trump. But obviously we already knew that. And technically you too, because we were far too critical of Kamala Harris. And if you're critical of Kamala Harris, who was the best possible candidate at the time, that means you wanted Donald Trump to win.
Yeah, I actually think that we have thoroughly defeated those guys. So there's a lot of folks out there that are still in the circle for who might come out ahead, right, in terms of ideology. But the guys who are not going to win, I don't think, are the ones who are like, oh, Kamala was right all along. Like, that's kind of done, right? So the way that makes a comeback is through the form of Buttigieg or Newsom, right? So those guys aren't done. But like the Kamala stands, the beehive is dead, right? There's not a single
K-hive. Yeah.
Yeah, K-hive. Right.
Yeah,
There's
no,
not
beehive-
a
Yeah,
K
the
left in
beehive is
hive.
alive and well.
Yeah, beehive is very much alive. There's a bayhive.
Bayhive, yeah, that's the biggest one. But her and Taylor Swift are immortal. But in politics, Kamala's done.
All right. So we've had many battles on this broadcast about our disagreements, but I think it's important to start the conversation with our agreements. You've been manning the ship on Piers Morgan every single time you appear, defending Palestinians and Palestinian humanity.
If Cenk is advocating on the behalf of like Palestinian emancipation, that's not where the two of us have disagreements at all. It's one of the reasons why when he does good on say a Piers Morgan segment, or I'll play the clip and I'll just say, well, I think he's doing a lot of really shitty things right now with this whole strange triangulation with that we need to align with the MAGA nationalists because they care about the working class, which they don't. They care exclusively about getting liberal tiers and watching immigrants and trans people suffer. That's what seems to be more important to them than even having a better quality of life. It's that old kind of like adage that a white supremacist indoctrinated base will consistently be okay with having a worse quality of life if they think another group that they want to be superior to can even have a worse quality of life than that. Like it's like a lowering tide sinks all ships kind of philosophy. That's what I find the MAGA nationalists are very preoccupied with.
And I believed it at the time. I'm a kid, right? That they had to take buffer zones, and that's why they originally took the West Bank, Golan Heights, Sinai, and Gaza. But no, now I realize no. The Greater Israel Project was from day one. They attacked, and they attacked last time in '67 to take more land and do more ethnic cleansing, and that's what they did.
I think given the state of affairs in 2025, especially after 2 years of Israel's genocide and also the endless amount of arrogance of Zionists on television and their demands for censorship, this conversation that's taking place is probably taking place in many American tables, regardless of the political ideology at play.
Probably
you
true.
and I have difference in opinion on certain issues, but ultimately, this is something that we completely unite on and completely agree on. And I think that is actually a point of agreement for many people, even like evangelical Christians and whatnot, that are probably having the exact same conversation. So remember that for the Thanksgiving enjoyers, when you're with your family, if you want to unite on certain things, I think Israel will probably be one of those points of contention, or Zoran Mamdani. So what do you think about Zoran Mamdani?
Yeah, just real quick before we go on to Zoran. Look, I never thought this would happen in my lifetime.
Oh yeah, me either.
Like that Israel would be, that people would understand what's happening about Israel and the injustice of Israel, not just on the left, but the left, right, and center. That the whole country would agree, outside of mainstream media, outside of the politicians, no, we're done with these guys. And this is a gigantic injustice. And most importantly, we all now agree we've all been lied to by legacy media, right? Corporate media is poison. It's the biggest toxic influence in America. Now the right, the left, the center, everyone agrees. Corporate media, they've been lying to us from day one. So look, that's another one. For 20 years I've been saying that. And to see everybody come around to that, I love it. I love it. So Zoran's to the left of me. So it makes sense that like he's kind of perfect for you, right? I think you tell me. But I love it. I love
Again, to the left of you, when like I know Zoran has been completely tarnished at this point as hardcore Marxist, radical communist, Muslim jihadist by the right and all that kind of stuff. But again, what was he campaigning on? They're not issues that I think on any level Cenk would disagree with on paper. In fact, some of them were similar to the campaign promises that he made when he was running for president because Trump was a fascist and he identified that Trump was going to be a fascist and said he had to run, break glass in case of emergency. You need me in there to try and pull everyone further to the left and save the day. And unfortunately, it did not save the day, but valiant effort. And now maybe he's, I guess, less fascist and more nationalist, or I don't know where MAGA's at, but it was what? Cheap groceries, rent freeze, affordable and free transportation. That was it. very, very basic social democratic policies you will find in most parts of Scandinavia, and some parts on certain levels in Canada, other nations that have tried similar measures that actually have very good benefits for the working class. And if the working class lives better lives, then they can afford to buy the shit that you want to sell them, which even fucking, full-blown fascist racists like Henry Ford understood back in the day. You can't afford to buy my cars unless I start giving you all days off and give you a little bit more money to be able to buy the cars themselves, and I need you to buy the cars. Whereas now the whole economy works in that only 10% of consumers do 50% of all the consuming in the US. So really most things are catered towards that 10% richest Americans who can afford to buy their kids Switch 2s, even though Switch 2s, unfortunately, don't really let you own the games anymore. You own the download codes.
But because it's change. I love it because middle finger to AIPAC that spent $45 million trying to meddle in our elections, and them, why don't they go back to their own country? Okay, New York is in America. It's not in Israel. It's not Tel Aviv. Okay, and I'm proud that it's the largest Jewish city, and I'm proud that they voted for Zoran, right? So this division on trying to divide Americans with Jew, Muslim, Christian, etc. No, we're America. They're not America. And that's that. And then he's for change, man. The status quo. So I'm thrilled that Andrew Cuomo lost.
Why do you say he's more to the left than you?
So some of those policies are not the direction I'd go, but I want him to try it anyway.
Like what are the policies?
So like freeze on the rent control apartments. First of all, I don't think he's saying that'll solve the whole thing. It won't. No, it only affects a tiny amount of apartments, right? But
1.2 million units or something, I think.
Yeah, which is not tiny, actually.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's tiny for New York, but go on.
Yeah, but rent control, in my opinion, doesn't work. It pushes up prices in other apartment buildings. In fact, I think it's counterproductive. I wish it worked. It's a simpler solution.
Okay, Matt, but I don't think.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you an abundist? No. You're not an Ezra Klein doctrine understander and appreciator?
No, I mean, I'd have that conversation with Ezra, and I think he's probably at least a third right. But he's not right in the central thesis, which I think is misguided, right? But no, on rent control, I'm definitely a centrist.
Okay, what about public housing? What about building robust socialized housing as a way to boost the number of available units and as a way to deflate the existing housing market and the prices?
So we've done public housing terribly in the past. We've done public housing in rare cases pretty good in America. But this is the year 2025, and Zoran's a smart guy. So I hope we learn some of our lessons, that we don't
he hasn't ran on building public housing. As a matter of fact, I think it's a major area of weakness for the American left in general, because there's not a single Democrat that even broaches the subject matter from that angle. And every single person, even though it's the number one, like affordability is the number one priority, but affordability, as you know better than anybody else, brackets off into certain aspects, right? Healthcare is a part of the affordability conversation. And I think Democrats do have, or at least the left flank in the Democratic Party has a really solid approach to that. Socialized medicine, Medicare for all. But housing is another aspect of this that no one ever talks about, or they do talk about it, but they don't actually have a simple, easy to understand policy for it. That's why we keep consistently going back and forth on Band-Aid solutions, which you're right. Rent control is a Band-Aid solution. I'm in favor of the decommodification of housing in general. So obviously this works in that direction.
I'm not for decommodification of housing, but I agree with you on public housing. And I think that there's a right way to do it. So the problem was that we concentrated poverty last time, right? When we didn't know what we were doing in the 1960s and 70s. So now we've done it right a couple of times, spread it out a little bit and make it more mixed housing, but it at least creates more units.
It's the most generic answer to that kind of a question. I think, we did some stuff and that stuff didn't work out, or maybe it did a bit, or maybe it worked out in this one way, but then ultimately we should just do a mixed model, and then do more of that, see if that works.
Units helps supply and demand in bringing down, in creating higher supply, so bringing down prices. So there's a lot of logic in it.
Yeah, but he's not advocating for socialized housing. But I do think that this is the next initiative. If the Democrats actually do have this robust left flank movement and, start unseating establishment Democrats and put forward DSA candidates and things of that nature, I hope.
Also, you got to find a way to sell it the way Zoran sells it. So it can't just be you coming out there being like, hey, by the way, the solution to a lot of this housing crisis that we find ourselves in here in Canada or over in the United States right now, it happens to be we need to build public housing, social housing, and supportive housing, and we need to build it immediately. And there's a public interest. It'll save us money in the long run. It'll have less people living on the streets. It'll actually take care of a lot of problems at the same time. Already, you've probably lost some people because all they need to do is say the word communist at any point in that speech, right? If you're like, I think that we should have more communism. You're saying a communist. I don't want communism. I've seen what communism does. Have you not seen the bread lines? No, we're not doing that here. It'll be a disaster. We're the richest nation in the world for a reason, and that's because we have a solid housing crisis. You could also sell it the way Zoran sells things, which is you don't have to try and front load all this information and be like, I want you, if you work hard, to be able to afford a house. And I have a public policy that is going to guarantee that for citizens who have played by the rules, who have worked hard, who have lived the American dream, but aren't getting it in return because of the elites and the fat cats who are taking, like, it doesn't matter how, you have to sell it in such a way that when people are like, well, what is he talking about when he says that? He's talking about the one real way that you can solve this problem. A housing first initiative. If you have a housing first initiative, if you actually start prioritizing and have government developed projects that, yes, will have to take a certain amount of a cut because there's not going to be a capitalist way to solve this problem. The capitalism is the reason that we're in the problem in the first place. But start talking about how, yes, we're going to need socialized housing, cooperative housing, as well as supportive housing for people who have, mental health issues and an addiction. And these can be very expensive. And it might not, in the very start, be anything outside of an upfront cost to a taxpayer. And you can also tax the very wealthy and the very rich to start paying for a lot of that stuff, and start taxing developers more. And the very people who want to build very expensive condos, you can start looking into systems in which they have to pay a certain percentage of the amount of earnings that they make in order to pay for this socialized housing. But you invent a plan, and one that you then have to sell to the everyday person. And it sucks that you have to do that, but that's what politics is now, right? I mean, it's literally just team sports and name calling. In fact, Trump has transformed it into nothing but name calling, right? So whatever strategy you got to do, figure out the most effective ones. Someone like Zoran was really good at selling a bunch of stuff that otherwise sounded terrifying to the average American, where it's like, oh, he wants communist grocery stores, socialist bananas. I don't want those. He's going to make us all have bread lines. Or it's like, oh, he wants to have free public transportation. Everywhere that's been tried, it's a disaster. The buses run into the cats. I've seen it. We have to stop this. And it's like, well, his message is so simple. And honestly, it's being done so charismatically. And their social media team takes a lot of credit for a lot of this. But people stop being scared when it's just like, that's not what he's saying. He's not saying that he wants to communism you, or that he is the Stalin 2 or something like this. He's literally saying he wants you to not have to pay as much money and keep more of your own cash. And you should be able to live a better life if you are working hard.
Hope that there will be a more united message on that, where people will approach the subject of housing in a similar vein, where they do talk about, permanent public housing and better alternatives.
Yeah. So the other thing that I don't necessarily agree with, but I want them to try, is the city-run grocery stores. So, like, I don't get it. I don't know why that's the biggest, among the biggest priorities. I get some food deserts. I get that there's some, some more high-density minority areas where it could be helpful. On the other hand, it's like a Muslim unemployment plan in New York. All the bodegas are run by Muslims.
Wow, what a weird conservative talking point. If you try to do this, you are actually attacking this community and the bodegas themselves. How dare you? How dare you not think of the small business owners? And it's like, this system that he's proposing, by the way, as radical as it may seem to a lot of Americans, it's done in Mexico. And the system in Mexico, on a very much larger scale, is being done by a capitalist nation. Mexico is not socialist, it's not communist, right? It is still a neoliberal capitalist nation. There are elements that they are trying to transform right now under Claudia Sheinbaum, but still, they have had a public and government subsisted grocery program for a very long time, in large part to try and help out areas that are more remote, that they don't have access to as many cheap and maybe plentiful fresh fruits and groceries of that nature, that also have pre-made meals for people who can't afford to, do meal prep at home because they're working too many jobs, and obviously will have cheaper prices as a result of being subsidized. And it also helps the food producers and the growers in the country, who then have a very, standardized model for being able to sell vast amounts of their produce. It's not a disaster. And yes, it's the same thing can be said for military bases. That's another really good example of that. You never think of, say, like Alaska as a communist nation or a socialist nation, and you never think of the U.S. military as one of the largest government-run social programs that provides housing, healthcare, food, jobs, education. But that is essentially, in many ways, one of the largest government, if not the largest government program that provides all of those things to millions of Americans in exchange for them killing on the behalf of the U.S. Imperial Empire. So that's the part that you can get rid of. Get rid of the whole, you have to do this to kill on the behalf of the U.S. Imperial Empire. But we should be providing a whole bunch of things because it does seem to have really good benefits in terms of we can have an entire, generation of people that are housed, that are fed, and that are also working as part of a government program. It would just be better if the government program wasn't, again, killing brown people in other countries and torturing them.
I'm exaggerating, but I don't know that was a big pressing need. But I want them to try it. I want them to try the free busing. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, so what?
So why do capitalists hate government intervention in the markets? Because they want to set the prices under what they consider as market conditions. So basically, I think the way this would work, it's a pilot program with no assurances that it'll be 100% successful. But I think ultimately the goal there is to try and drive down profits with with much better, much more affordable groceries being sold, because there's a bunch of different things that you don't have to pay for, like licensing and things of that nature when you have the government-run grocery stores. So therefore, the goal is to drive down prices for other grocery chains, specifically like the big retailers, I think, like big grocery chains in general.
Yeah, let's try it, see what happens.
Yeah. Also, they do have it. I mean, it's the commissary and the military, right? Which the Trump administration is trying to privatize right now, because I think they just want to do a mutiny. They want to foment mutiny in the military.
So look, if you're on the right and you're like, oh, you just want to just try it, like, yeah, because that's how we learn, right?
But that's how so many people voted for Donald Trump. Oh, I just want to try it out again because we got to shake up the system.
Yeah, and the states are supposed to be, laboratories where we experiment. And by the way, some of the right say, can you name it? Some guy on Fox was like, can you name any time that they made something public and it worked better? Like bank in North Dakota. They created a state bank. It worked great.
Municipal utilities.
Yeah.
Literally almost every single time the municipality has taken over utilities, it has been so successful that Google worked extra hard to make it illegal in other places. Like, they do not want internet service providers or water or electricity or sewage systems to be controlled by the municipality. But yes, fire department is another great example of this as well.
And that goes to the last point, which is we don't know what should be public and private perfectly until we try a couple of different systems.
Wow.
Like, theoretically, you know it a little bit better. If you study other countries, you'll have better examples, etc. But like the fire department used to be private, and that turned into a disaster because if you're...
I got an idea of what should be public and what should be private.
Yeah.
I think most of it should be publicly owned.
Yeah, and I think most of it should be privately owned.
That's crazy.
But that's okay.
But also, why? Every example that you think of, like, you didn't even have to list like the Texas power grid, but look at the disaster that's been compared to other regions in the U.S.
It's America.
No, it isn't. It isn't. So, okay, now I'll make an argument that I'm a better capitalist than anyone on the right way.
Okay, let's hear it.
Because the capitalism is all about free markets and competition. The problem is that right now, what the Uniparty is in favor of, what almost all the Republican politicians are in favor of, and what a lot of the right wing got tricked for a long time into being in favor of, is corporatism, right? So this is unregulated.
I was like, if he's going to do the classic centrist, it's like, capitalism's not the problem, all right? It's corrupt capitalism. That's the problem. And corporatism. That's the real problem. That's why we want to make things more fair, all right? At the end of the day, I'm a proud capitalist, but I do also want people to play by the rules. And at this point, a lot of the very wealthy aren't paying their fair share, but we're going to make sure they do. And then they don't. And then the right comes into power. And then the right's like, hey, how about you pay nothing? How about we'll just deregulate everything, take all the monies, you rich people keep it. You need it more than anyone else does right now. And then if you have extra, you can spend it on buying up all the rest of those houses because you probably want to park it somewhere because you're not just going to spend it on the poors, are you?
Capitalism, which then leads to corporate rule. Corporations capture the government.
It's the natural inclination of every company to become a monopoly, and that's
right, and I'm actually agreeing with you. So what happens is if you don't regulate capitalism, it inevitably becomes corporatism. And corporatism is the exact opposite of capitalism. It tries to destroy free markets, destroy competition, and become a monopoly, right? And it does it mainly through
This is why, like, you know, he needs just one day of nothing but Richard Wolff content. Just get him to watch a full couple seminars, read a couple of the books. They're very quick and easy. Just to understand why everything he's saying is so fundamentally wrong. The idea that you can put all the burdens of capitalism on the corporation itself, like everything would have been fine and was fine, I'll have you know, back in the day before the corporation came along. No, it really wasn't. You know, there was the whole North Atlantic slave trade that was benefiting certain groups more than other groups. And really in the United States, if you happen to be a white land-owning male, then yeah, you might be okay, a little bit better, I would say, in that system. But it wasn't great for everyone else. And yeah, the idea of the corporation, which were, you know, essentially formed to start building things like railroads and stuff like that, began to become more and more powerful. They began to have more protectionism. They began to seek to make themselves more powerful through lobbying in order to grow in size. And you know, there were times when the United States actually did take some action, you know, to break up things like the Rockefellers and to use antitrust laws and that kind of stuff. But they've grown into such an aberration now where they actually have a lot of the same rights as human beings, which is obviously perverse and fucked up and detrimental to civilization. But that doesn't mean that the corporation is the problem within capitalism. Like if you got rid of corporations in their totality, but you still had a capitalist system, it's still going to be an unfair system that creates hierarchies. It's built into the very essence of the coding itself, right? If you have an economic system where you have the right to buy and sell property, capital, that's essentially capitalism. And what separates it from others, there's going to be employers and employees. In the same way that there was other ways of stratifying society. There was slaves and masters, lords and serfs, kings and their subjects. These were ways of stratifying society into different hierarchies. Now, under capitalism, you have a different system. Again, it's employer and employee. You have a boss and you have a worker. And the boss is going to have to, just under the principle of how capitalism works, sell your labor at more money than he is paying you for it, or he won't make money. That's just how the structure is going to be. That's not even a disputable thing. That's just how math works. That's very basic numbers. If you are making things for him, he needs to be able to sell those things for more money than the actual labor that he is paying you for. So that's how he gets more money than you, and he gets to be in a higher stratification of society. Quite simple.
Government capture. So Adam Smith was right. You have to guard against monopolies. You must regulate. If you don't regulate, then capitalism will turn into corporatism and destroy free market. So that's why that position is more ideologically
But you're not in
correct.
favor of that for healthcare.
No, that because capitalism means by definition a mixed economy, right? There is no non-mixed economies. The military's public, police are public, fire is public. And so when you go down the list, healthcare is perfect for public. Healthcare insurance is perfect for public rather than private. Why? Number one, like fires, viruses spread. So whether your neighbor is healthy or not is relevant to you.
Oh my God,
Number two, it's a combined pool, makes it a lot less, more efficient. And then most importantly,
fire starts to
if you
burn.
put a profit motive
Starts
on
to spread.
denying healthcare, which is your costs, they will deny healthcare to the maximum, to their maximum ability to maximize profit. So then you've literally built an industry that is better served by killing more people, right? So, and that's why over 70,000 Americans die every year because they don't have health insurance. That's among the reasons why. And way more die because their insurance didn't cover the thing that they had because we privatized it. It's actually mental to privatize health insurance. It's just as dumb as privatizing cops, or even worse, the fire department.
I mean, I feel the same way about housing in general. Like, I don't think it means that it has to be like gray, brutalist architecture and city blocks. There are plenty of examples from Singapore to China, all the way to Austria, Vienna, where socialized housing runs supreme. Even in Hong Kong, as a matter of fact. And I was actually surprised to find this out, but I believe it's like 52% of everyone living in Hong Kong actually live in government housing. But that also has a major benefits cliff. So that actually keeps wages relatively low or people unemployed in an effort to make sure that they're still in government housing, because every house that is not owned by the government, that is not public housing, is so unimaginably expensive. Like the price difference is like $300 let's say the price difference is like $300 for government housing versus like $7,000 for a private unit. Like the cheapest private unit is so much higher that people would rather just like be unemployed than to actually get like that fiscal cliff would not exist under a universal program. And if people wanted luxury housing beyond that, you know, they could choose to spend all the extra dollars and get taxed out the ass in order to have the luxurious privilege of having this mega mansion or whatever.
Yeah. So look, I'm not anywhere near that. I think housing, but not totally private. I'm willing to experiment with public housing in certain circumstances and see how it goes and how does it affect the market. Does it, you know, like we talked about earlier, create more supply and hence help with prices, right? And, you know, is there a bare minimum where we should help people not be on the streets? Of course, right? So then, you know, in the lower levels, you're having a conversation is what degree is it public? Because if they're I think we all agree if they're homeless and they want shelter, we should give them shelter, right? So that's in a sense public housing, like the low.
This is like that should be bare humanity. Do you experience the feelings of empathy? Have you experienced empathy before? Okay. Does it make you sad then to think about the fact that in some of the richest parts of the world, we have a massive unhoused crisis? Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. You have people who can own 10 houses, be multi-millionaires or even billionaires, and there's not a lot of them, but those few existing does result in the fact that all the way down on the sliding scale of capitalism, there's also people who just live on the streets. And yeah, I mean, the only other response you can have is you got to turn that into anger, right? You got to start being like, well, yeah, because they're leeches on society and they decided to live this way and that's their fault. And they want to just do drugs all day and live on the street. Who amongst us wouldn't want that, all right? All of us, if we were given a choice, would want to do heroin every single day and live on the streets. That's just, but I work hard because I care and they don't.
Lowest level.
But it's not permanent, right?
So it's not permanent. But I'm just saying that at the lower levels, by definition, you have to have some sort of public housing.
Yeah, you're saying like you have to have some sort of permanent public housing for people who just like literally have no other option.
I think that that's a possibility.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And so, but the minute you get into the middle class and beyond, you got to have a normal market.
Why? Why do you think so? Like, what do you think are the downsides of public housing?
Anytime that we like I do believe in the markets. So if you're going to have public sneakers or burgers or jeans or even houses or cars.
Okay. There's a difference.
Okay.
One is clothing versus the other is shelter though, right? Like that's why I say like you can have a private market or a free enterprise for small businesses or even for certain goods.
Markets aren't exclusive to capitalism. No, and I think there's some, like, I think centrists and, you know, pretty ardent capitalists get really scared of the fact that, like, they don't want to live in a society where, say, the government actually manages all finances, all industries, because then you're going to end up like the situation in Cuba, where you go into a supermarket and it's not like Walmart. It's not like when you walk in, you just see thousands of products brought to us by the beauty of capitalism. And it had not been for Walmart and these corporations that are bringing us so many different versions of the Dorito, Taco, Cheeto Express Supreme. Like, we wouldn't be able to have that. And there's something beautiful. You know, I've seen like libertarians and capitalists actually praise the idea of walking into a Costco and how wondrous the experience is to just look at the endless shelves of consumer end products that you can buy, so many different variations. And then you have to start like explaining to them, this is about 10 to 11 companies that are making all of these food products, these thousands of different food products, different brands, different colors, different shapes, sizes, flavors, all of that. It's just about 10 to 11 companies that produce all of them. They have monopolized that industry as they have monopolized every industry. If we walk down the aisle to the beer section, it's going to be 4 to 5 corporations that actually produce all these beers. If we walk over here to computers, it's going to be 3 to 4 companies that are producing all of these machines. You are seeing monopolization at its purest essence here. And when you talk about Cuba, they're like, yeah, but you go to Cuba, they have one shampoo. And it's like the shampoo, and they have one conditioner, and it's like the conditioner. And I don't want that. I want to have my options. I want to have Head and Shoulders, or I want to have this little soapy bubble bath one, so I can actually, you know, pour the goo with the ducky, you know, like I want to have capitalist options, and I don't want to have to live in a socialist nightmare where you only get one product. the issue with Cuba is actually kind of complex, and a lot of it has to do with embargoes. A lot of it has to do with the United States imposing embargoes upon them where they can't actually import or export a lot of the same goods and the same way that we can here. So that prevents them from, say, importing a whole bunch of U.S. and American made brands and products into their store shelves. And they also have a lot of more difficulty producing and manufacturing raw commodities just in and of themselves. Now, they have achieved a lot for a country that has been strangled by the United States for so long. You got to remember that they are doing what they are doing in terms of, having lots of doctors, having lots of hospitals and all that kind of stuff, despite the fact they have these kind of impositions upon them. But that doesn't mean by definition, if you have a communist country or you have a socialist country, that means you have one shampoo. And one shampoo to rule them all. And that you better enjoy it. Better be a good-ass shampoo, because if you don't like it, you're fucked. Go to other models. Like, look at countries that have been completely destroyed and ravaged by the United States and its imperialism that have now gone into more state-controlled economies, like Vietnam, for example. If you go to the stores in Vietnam, you'll probably notice that they are similar to stores in the West in that they have a huge amount of products on the shelves. You can buy multiple different kinds of shampoo. You can buy 12 different shampoos. It doesn't matter as much, It's not capitalism itself that gives you the Costco experience. And without it, you will not be able to see all these different brands. It's actually giving you the opposite, but it gives you the illusion of choice. When you walk in Costco, you think, I have so many options. Capitalism is amazing. Look at all these brands I can choose as a consumer. As a capitalist, I get to vote, and I vote for the ones I want, and those ones do well. And then when they do well to a certain point, this bigger company buys them out. That's the system. It's like, hey, do you start a jam? Is it a delicious jam? Not a very common jam, maybe like a fig and some thyme, something really tasty but weird. And you got a recipe from your grandma and you're making it, and you start making 100 jam jars a month, and then it does really well. People love it. It's delicious. So you start doing 200, then 500, then 1,000, then you reach 10,000. Then you got to start hiring a person to help make the jam with you. So you got 2 people working for you. And then all of a sudden you're like, I got to make 100,000. You open up a factory, you have a jam processing center. At a certain point, you're going to get a knock on the door, and it's going to be one of those, tasty or yummy brand foods or whatever that big, massive corporation is. And they're going to be like, you make a jam. We like your jam. We like to buy your jam. And then we're going to sell your jam. And it's going to be our jam. It's like, oh, no. I don't want any of that. I just love making my jam. And that's why I'm doing it. And I want people to enjoy the taste and all that. It'll taste the exact same. And here, I'm going to make you an offer you can't refuse. This is the amount of money that you never thought you'd see in your lifetime. And now your jam is our jam. People will still get to have it. It'll be shipped internationally. More people than ever will be eating your grandma's recipe. It's going to be wonderful. But we own you now. That's how this works. Because again, you're starting to cut into a very small little crumb of our market, and we don't want that. They're kind of like they work the same way drug dealers do, where if you are selling in a certain territory, a drug dealer will come along and be like, I'm sorry, sir, but you cannot sell your cocaine here. I will have to kill you unless you get out of my territory. These are my customers. And it's like, what? Yep, yeah, but you can work for me. That's what you can do. If you want to sell my brand stuff, working for me, and then you have to pay up, I obviously want to cut. That's how it's going to work, but there it is, But
at the end of the day, he's too attached to the old system. So he's going to side with the McConnells of the world, is my guess. So not that useful, right? So now we're left with 2 guys that are left. Tucker Carlson, and I'm going to say the word or the name, Nick Fuentes. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's I have stopped censoring that Nick Fuentes mentioned since he's getting profiled by the New York Times,
Yeah. So Tucker Carlson, I think, has a shot at actually meaning it. And so I'm not sure that I agree with you.
You and I have had a private conversation about this many years ago, and I think I've been vindicated on this.
I completely agree.
I think I've been vindicated on it, but we can have that conversation in a minute. So to now you go to, we'll come back to Tucker. You go to Fuentes. And so he seemed to be a classic guy who's, to be fair to him, not hiding his nationalism. Right. So he was like, I'm going nationalist. I'm going Christian nationalist, white nationalist. It appeared to me, right, that was.
You're already downplaying it. He's a Nazi. He's very overt in his beliefs. And you can't, there's been so many rebranding attempts done. This is what actually paves the way for fascism. I want to be completely clear about that. If you downplay the shit, maybe it's just that, oh, well, he said some pretty inflammatory stuff back in the day. Yeah, but he's changed a lot since then. And he's openly said that at certain points in his career, he's had to actually try and change his messaging, that he wants to create alliances with different groups at different points, whatever it's going to be. The guy is a Nazi. He's a straight up Nazi. There's nothing to be gained by aligning with him for any reason. They have a project. Nick Fuentes is a very clear project. He makes his own fans, the Groypers. They have to do a pledge of allegiance to him. They have to swear that they will kill on his behalf, that they will rape on his behalf. It's a whole thing he does on his show. He's like, raise your hand. Oh, okay, everyone repeat after me. You won't kill for me. And like all this weird shit like that. But he has been selling this idea of a resurrection of the master race, the white race that had their birthright taken away from them from feminism. He blames Jewish indoctrination of the media, control of the media, as well as politicians. He blames trans people and gay people, homosexuality and sin and deviance, and good old-fashioned Satanism just mixed in there because, again, these are ungodly people. But he is basically taking an entire white supremacist, white nationalist movement and trying to get them excited for the fact that they are eventually going to take back their birthright. That's his project. His project is not Palestinian emancipation. It's not equal rights for Muslims. It's not to stop Islamophobia. It's not to fight against any kind. Like, he is an Islamophobe. He hates Muslims. He has openly said that he wants a total and complete ban of all Muslims entering the United States. In totality. Doesn't matter where they come from. Doesn't matter if they're applying with H-1B visas. Doesn't matter how they're getting into the United States. He wants to ban all of them. He has said that explicitly out loud. So this is a Nazi who wants to, like, his project is a Nazi project. There is no room to align with any part, even if he says one day something you agree with and he's got a platform and then some of his own audience are like, okay, yeah, we hate Israel now. Yeah, he hates Israel because he's bought into the Zionist definition of anti-Semitism, equating it with anti-Zionism or anti-colonialism. And so he pushes that idea. He's like, here's another angle that I can now attack Jewish people from because he's always attacking Jewish people because he's an anti-Semite and a Nazi.
Was my original read of him, but now he's also changing, and so now I know we all cancel him to bejesus. And
I mean,
okay, Barry Weiss, if you're watching, which you obviously are,
Holocaust denier,
right? So no problem. You deny the Holocaust. You say all these things. He's against race mix. Well, yeah. I'm married to an Asian woman. What am I going to agree with that? Right? So obviously we're against all that. But even now he has realized that's not actually where his audience is. So whether it's Craven,
I think he's a grifter. I think these guys are all grifters.
Right. Whether it's Craven or not, whether they're grifters or not, even Fuentes is now saying, he said it just like 2 days ago, you know what? Maybe we put aside the racism and the cruelty and the abuse, right? Which is an amazing admission, by the way.
He is a Nazi. It does not matter what he says and how he's trying to position himself. That is his project. His project is to have the white race dominate over all other races. That's intrinsic to his core beliefs and what he advocates on the behalf of. If at a certain point he's like, well, we're going to tone down the racism. We'll make things a little less racist. I won't say the N-word as much anymore. See, I did it there. I'm a better man. Who gives a fuck? He's a fucking Nazi. This is one of those things where it's like, hey, by the way, a Nazi is starting to get incredibly popular amongst the right in America right now because it really feels like the Overton window has shifted so fucking much in the United States that people are now just being like, you know what, maybe the Nazis are right. You have people, white dudes, going on fucking Jubilee, admitting out loud that they are proud fascists. When it's like, hey, by the way, what you're saying is extremely fucked up and racist and really harkens to fucking Hitler stuff, right? And it's like, yeah, well, maybe that's what I am now. Maybe that's what I believe. And it's like, okay, that needs to be destroyed. It is a fucking zero-sum game at that point.
Right. That kind of is the direction they were going, right? And he says maybe we put that aside to be able to unite with the left.
I don't believe
I'm not saying yes to Fuentes. I'm just saying look at the tide moving. The tide is moving towards popular.
Right. So then you don't say, and that's because Nick Fuentes is saying the right things and changing his messaging a little bit, and we should have a conversation with him, or we should align with that aspect, or we should see why this is getting. You should look at that and realize that there is a section of the American right that right now are being sold a lie so aggressively, and they have been primed for a long time by other conservatives who are now having to deal with the consequences of the full-blown Nazism. But if you have people like Ben Shapiro right now who are very concerned about Nick Fuentes, he's very angry about him, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, they're all like, hey, this person is starting to speak on a behalf of a section of the right, especially the younger, right-wing men, where they are actually in tune with his white supremacist ideas. We went too far. it's getting out of control. We need to, start attacking Nick Fuentes too now, because apparently Nick Fuentes is becoming the new voice of a generation. If you are the home of progressives and you're looking at this from a leftist standpoint, there's nothing to be gained there by aligning with a Nazi in any capacity. If he says, hey, by the way, I want to stop the U.S. funding Israel, okay, a Nazi said that. It doesn't have value. Not value in the same way that if someone has a long-standing career of advocating on the behalf of, like, say, disenfranchised people, and they're like, this is why I come to these conclusions, tell me more. I want to learn more. If it's a Nazi saying it, it's part of his Nazi project. You have to ask, why is a Nazi suddenly saying these things? Why is it going to be politically advantageous for a Nazi to speak this way? That's all you have to do from your analysis. Not, how can I work with this? Like, ooh. He's quite popular, getting articles in big magazines. More and more people are starting to tune into his shows. He's all over the place right now. He's even on Red Scare podcast. He's on Glenn Greenwald. He's on Tucker Carlson. I mean, he's having a moment. How can we take advantage of it?
Listen, because it's being driven by the audience. The audience wants real populism. So when they sense bullshit, they don't want it, and they're pushing in a better direction. So why is Tucker? Now, let's go to the heart of it. Tucker, right?
That's also supremely fucked, because that's not the reason why Nick Fuentes is blowing up and becoming more popular than ever. His core beliefs and his messaging are the exact same. You might want to look at the fact that under mass alienation, under a lot of people suffering under capitalism, more and more people, especially men, who have been told that, like, your role in life is to be a provider. Your role in life is to do good under capitalism, get a good job, support your wife, support your family, be a protector of them. That's what the entire thing about being a man is supposed to be. That's true masculation right there. So, hey, there's a lot of people who are getting fucked over under the current system, who can't afford a house, who can't get a good paying job. Men are not getting into university and dropping out of college at much faster rates than women. You have an entire generation of people who feel lost and who are now still being told the same thing. And all of a sudden, it's like, it's not your fault. Your birthright was taken away from you. You had a birthright. You were supposed to be a powerful, rich, successful man who has, a beautiful wife, beautiful Aryan, white children, all this kind of stuff. But it got taken away from you from feminism. It got taken away from you from immigrants. The very idea and the notion of gender is being destroyed by trans ideology, wokeness, the woke mind virus, DEI, hiring policies that are anti-white. They're actually trying to make you oppressed. That's what's happening. Well, yeah, there's a percentage of people, especially young men, looking for those answers, who have a person like Nick Fuentes feeding them this Nazi bullshit. That's one of the reasons this stuff is rising. And as there's this splinter that's going on, because there's a lot of Republicans that are also neoconservatives. They're also neoliberals, by the way. I know it's got the word liberal in it, so it confuses a lot of people. But they are ardent capitalists who want to see, again, this entire system continue to perpetuate extreme wealth inequality. And that also comes with the sales pitch of also it requires U.S. military imperialism, and that U.S. military imperialism does come in the form of directly supporting Israel and all of the war crimes and genocides and atrocious things that Israel is doing. And so those same far-right individuals now are like, I have another lane that I can now speak to people about, and people like this are willing to buy it.
Why is Tucker, to me, today different than he was on Fox News? Because on Fox News, he worked for corporate media, and he says it now himself. He says, yeah, I mean, there were certain things we were allowed to say, not allowed to say. I regret a lot of the things that I said on there. So,
like bringing on the guy who sucked Obama's dick. I wanted to for so long. I wanted to bring him on. They wouldn't let me. But the guy, I mean, come on. He sucked Obama's dick. We got to hear him out. Listen to his story.
Now he's more tethered to the audience than he is to Rupert Murdoch. And so he tries to serve his audience better. And now he says wrong about Iraq, right? Wrong about war overall, wrong about a bunch of things, right? Mm-hmm. And by the way, have a lot of us on the left said as much as he has about all the things.
By the way, there's a difference between being consistent and being an opportunist, right? Which I would say Tucker Carlson is most likely the other one. Like, come on. Tucker Carlson is not, like, he is brought on when he was working at Fox News, very, very angry generals who they were calling for, like, people to sit on a throne of Chinese skulls. He is not, like, at the forefront right now of the preventing U.S. intervention in Venezuela movement. You know, Nick Fuentes himself has gone on to Alex Jones's show to talk about about how they are very pro-U.S. intervention in Venezuela. That they invoke the Monroe Doctrine. They've talked about how it's actually defensive. Like they've tried to sell the entire thing as, well, I mean, at the end of the day, if they had a weapon and they want to use it against us, it's in our interest to then, go in there. It's just like, I can say this as a nationalist. It's in my national U.S. interests to prevent them, preemptively attack them before they attack us. So let's do some more imperialism. None of this is, again, these people have to realize they serve the same folk. They are all serving the interests of billionaires. They are all serving the interests of multinational corporations that influence U.S. politics. And it doesn't matter if they come at it from a Nazi white supremacist, this is the America First angle, or they come at it from the neoconservative, God bless America, the Ted Cruz's and the Lindsey Grahams. They're still serving the exact same interests in both directions.
Things we're wrong about, right?
No, I don't say that at all.
See? So what my point is, not that he's right and we're wrong or anything along those lines, but he's at least making movements to go towards agreement.
You're saying that there's a broader trend line that's moving in the direction of left politics, and that is the reason why the likes of Tucker Carlson are retriangulating their messaging. That's somewhat understandable, but I do think that ultimately, I don't necessarily care for Tucker Carlson personally or Nick Fuentes, but I do care about changing the mindset of their audiences, because I find socially regressive politics to be and reactionary politics to be a distraction, and that anyone that does that to any degree is inherently reactionary and deliberately doing this because they want to move people's attention and focus away from the material inequities that they are facing and away from steadfast approach to dealing with those problems.
Yeah, he's dead right
That
there.
is the reason why it's very easy for me to say all right-wingers in general are grifters, and even that moderation that they're engaging with is them simply reading the room and recognizing that they have to offer some kind of what you call populism, some kind of left-wing material solutions.
So let me say two things.
Also, there's so much historical precedent for this. Why do you think Hitler called his party the National Socialist Party? Did you look into this? Did you look why there has been so many cases where fascists have tried to rebrand themselves as populists? Why Mussolini, one of his big campaign promises with the trains were going to start running on time? And there's an aspect of the working class that will believe that will be like, okay, they must have the workers in mind, the national interest of workers in mind. They're not advertising this complete consolidation of the state and the corporation together to save capitalism while doing complete authoritarianism, and then actually trying to do the extermination of various groups that they think are subhuman. That's way less of the sales pitch than we are the National Socialist Party, and we are actually going to be advocating on the behalf of workers and making Germany great again. We're going to make Germany great again. We're going to return to an ideal time. We're going to go back pre-Weimar Republic when we actually, were, a much more powerful nation. We're going to have hyper-nationalism, hyper-belief in patriotism. That's going to be a very important part of this. Hyper-militarization is going to occur as well. This entire process, it's like Cenk is falling for the same thing in 2025 because Nick Fuentes said, I don't like Israel. Like, all of a sudden it's like, well, I think because Tucker Carlson is a populist, he's no longer beholden to a major corporation because he's untethered now. He's actually changing a lot of his ideas, his beliefs, and he's trying to respond to the will of his own audience. And it's like, no, he is doing the same thing he was doing before. He is brainwashing his audience because he comes from a super, super rich family. I mean, they're the fucking Swansons. Swanson TV dinners? Yeah, that family. He has been an elite his entire life, and he has changed from being a messenger where he was a proud elitist, by the way. He used to talk about how he, came from a very rich background. He's always had a lot of privilege and kind of stuff because that was a sign of success back then. And you could sell that to conservative audiences as in, I'm rich and powerful. You want to be too because I'm a capitalist. You should be a capitalist. Join the party. Join the team. That doesn't sell as well anymore, right? The very idea of like lifestyles of the rich and famous. A lot of people are like, fuck you. Like, genuinely, fuck you. Like, I'm having trouble paying rent. My kids don't have food. Fuck you. I don't want to see your 12 yachts and your mega mansions. So as that has changed, so has Tucker's messaging. So has this idea that Cenk has fallen for completely here, that it's like, hey, these people care about populism. I'm using a different word. It sounds more clever, doesn't it? They are populists. So they care about popular public policies that are going to benefit the large amount of people. And it's like, no, they don't. That's not what they advocate for. That's not what they vote for. That's not what they tell you to vote for. That's not for the politicians that they endorse or the platforms that they endorse as well. All of that is to benefit the rich elites, corporations, the billionaires that always has been, always will be. It's the same sales package. They're just, again, selling it to you in a different way. Oh, well, the problem is, again, we don't hate immigrants per se, but it really feels like, all of these companies brought in a bunch of immigrants into the country and they're taking advantage of them. And so what we should really do is just shut down immigration. Shoeshalism or whatever Shoe was trying to sell to everyone on the idea that she wasn't actually a far-right social conservative, but she cares about how corporations are taking advantage of workers when they come in from other countries. So we need to stop those programs. And it's like, but wait, shouldn't you hold the corporations accountable? And if you bring someone in from another country because they have a specialized ability to do something, say like coding or whatever it is that they're here for, they should have worker rights and protections. And even if people are coming here for what is considered unskilled labor, but goddamn, does it ever take some skill to do some of those jobs, like 8 to 9 hours a day? If they're coming over here, they should also be taken care of. That was the big fucked up thing in Canada. We brought over, well, we didn't, but corporations brought over so many workers from other countries without actually providing any kind of worker protections for them. And it was akin to modern day slavery when people started actually investigating it. And it's like, it's the companies that are doing this that should be held accountable. It's these rich corporations that are benefiting off cheap labor, while at the same time you just blame immigrants. Like, of course, Nick Fuentes is going to say it's the immigrants. Shoeonhead is going to say it's the immigrants. Tucker Carlson is going to say it's the immigrants.
Some of which do it because they want to maintain their popularity. Some of which do it because they have a higher degree of priority for like fomenting nationalistic sentiment, and they think this is the most effective way of doing it. I mean, Adolf Hitler was in charge of the National Socialist Party, right? Because at the time, socialism was a very popular movement. At a time when liberalism was failing, just as it is now, fascist movements were presenting themselves as revolutionary movements or an alternative to socialism that wasn't as scary. In Mussolini's Italy, it was bringing about a synthesis, as he would call it, of socialist sentiment, but also protecting the petite bourgeoisie.
Okay, so look, me, you, and maybe whoever it is that we want to assign as the avatar for nationalism. Well, you think it's Tucker, maybe it's Fuentes, maybe it's Megyn Kelly. I don't care, right? My point is, we might all have different agendas for what happens once we get out of the woods, right? Once we break out of the prison, to use a couple of different analogies. But we got to break out of the prison first. And once we break out of the prison, you want to go towards more social.
Nick Fuentes doesn't want to team up with you to break out of the prison. He wants to put minorities in the prison. That's his project. That's the reason this is all so foolish. It's like, hey, by the way, we need to align ourselves with a Nazi because this is Prison Break. Have you seen it? Pretty cool. The guy tattoos all his plans on his body and then he gets in there to save his brother who was wrongly framed for murder he didn't commit. And so he's going to try and break him out of the prison. You've seen that, right? So that's what we're doing right now. And the prison, I guess, is not capitalism, corporatism. So we need to break out of it with an alliance of a national movement, if you will. He's not fighting with you to break out of the prison. He is going to shank your ass so fast. Like, you won't even be able to blink the minute that he fucking shanks you. As soon as it's advantageous to him. Because his project is not breaking everyone out of the prison. It's to break only white people, certain white people, out of the prison. And white men specifically. And to have them rule all others by putting everyone else in jail. That's his project. It couldn't be more clear as day.
Somebody wants to go towards more nationalism. I want to go towards democracy, free markets, etc. Right? So, okay, but first we got to break out of the prison. So if you say to me, hey, let's say take Tucker. He has a hidden agenda and it's nationalism.
And he's not even hidden.
Yeah. No. Okay, whatever. And he'll say to you, and you don't, to be fair to you, you don't hide that your North Star is more socialism, right?
Yeah, because there's a difference between those two concepts.
Yeah, I get it.
One is good. The other is an incredibly deadly, self-defeating, suicidal ideology.
Yeah, I don't love socialism. And again, it depends on what we mean. If we mean Northern Europe, then I kind of do love socialism. If we mean like
No, northern,
Venezuela, then no, I don't love socialism.
Yeah.
And I get it. I don't want to get into that.
Socialism is an economic organization of socialism is a different organization of the economy. Venezuela and Norway actually have not even comparable degrees of socialization or nationalization. Norway actually has a higher degree of nationalization. This entire extraction industry is nationalized, as opposed to Venezuela that has a lower degree of socialization.
Yeah, like naturalizing your oil reserves, by the way, is a super interesting idea. So that's what I'm saying.
No,
but that's just.
But that's like the difference there is, of course, the way that the capitalist hegemonic superpowers have treated these countries. Norway is very close in proximity, or was very close in proximity to the USSR. So the threat of a good example from the USSR was what allowed a lot of these Western European countries to continue a degree of socialization, because they were conceding. Just like you're saying, Tucker Carlson is conceding to us on a lot of these issues. The capital owners there were conceding out of fear that if they don't concede at all, then they are going to become communist. Then that the European countries are going to snap into revolutionary communist movements.
So I got you. But what I'm saying, Haas, is so socialism, we can have a great, wonderful debate about how mixed our economy should be. And whereas nationalism goes towards authoritarianism, and I'm never going to agree to authoritarianism. So I get it. I get that they're not the same. And I get that even though I might not agree with either, I'd rather lean to one side than the other for sure, because I don't want anything to do with authoritarianism.
What do you mean by that? Authoritarianism, like socialism leading to authoritarianism.
No, national.
He's got horseshoe theory. I think it's how he understands the world. What you do is you draw a horseshoe, right? And then on each end of the horseshoe, on this side, you say this is the extreme right. So this is Nazis. This is full blown Hitler on this end. And on the left, you can say that this is hardcore leftist authoritarianism, Stalin, basically on the other end. And you'll realize, because of the way the horseshoe is formed, that the two ends end up getting very close, and they're almost fucking. And because of that, in that little sweet spot, that's where the theory comes in, that the extreme left and the extreme right end up at the exact same place. All extremes end up at the same place. And it's a very advanced way of understanding modern politics. It really does help.
Or nationalism leading to authoritarianism.
Yeah, nationalism almost always leads to authoritarianism.
Well, it's because...
Is it gay if the horseshoe ends touch? Yes, extremely gay.
It's because you have to eradicate, like, nationalism or fascism has a in-group, out-group dynamic. And there are inalienable characteristics that must be excised forcibly from society. So, of course, that is the reason why it has to be violent.
That's why I'm never going to agree with nationalism. That's why I'm saying, that's why I'm on the left.
Yeah.
So I'm closer to you than I am to a nationalist by a lot, right?
You shouldn't have to say that sentence out loud.
Nationalism you're right, is either white or Christian, or, by the way, it could be in a different country, Muslim or Jewish or black, whatever. But it's nationalism is exclusionary by definition.
Non-white nationalist movements have usually been, in the global South, or at least historically, have been liberation movements in general, like Pan-Arabic nationalism, Pan-African nationalism. These are not the same as like the nationalism that you see in nationalism is understandably something that people hate and despise, because it's in Western Europe or in America, it's the in-group that wants more domination and not
Irish nationalism might be the best way to explain that to some people who don't accept that, because I know there's a lot of people who immediately hear the term, like, black nationalism, and then they'll be like, oh wait, so that means that they believe that black people are a superior race to white people, and they want to subjugate white people, and maybe I'm describing my barely concealed fetish right now. And it's like, no, these are different things. You know what, maybe the easiest way to explain it is say like Irish liberation movements against the oppressive and colonizing forces of Britain. Maybe that explains it more to you now.
The dominated populations emancipatory movement. Like, I don't think you would disagree with like the FLN or something like Algeria. The decolonial initiatives in Algeria would be considered nationalistic
until they take over, right? So like if they went,
but past that
whoever's
point,
in power, it's
past
super
that point
easy.
you have a nation state,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah, whoever's in power, if they're the majority and they do exclusionary nationalism, then obviously I'm going to be against it because I'm inclusive, not exclusive.
Yeah.
So
all right, I'm gonna pee real quick. We'll finish this video while I. Not an emancipatory movement. That's why it's not emancipatory nationalism. Not that the distinction is important for history, but we're not even talking about that right now anyway.
Yeah. So, but my point, guys, to everyone, including you,
I really wish at some point he just like said flat out, like, there is nothing that can be gained by aligning with a Nazi on anything. Just in their totality, it is a completely destructive force. It is anti-civilizational. It is a pseudoscientific belief in absolute racist nonsense to the point that it is so mind poisoning. And its ultimate project is the subjugation of what they consider to be inferior races and people that they think are subhuman, people with disabilities, people who are gay, people who are trans. That's what fascism's ultimate project leads to. So even if you hear a fascist or a Nazi say something that you agree with, we're like, oh, that's funny. So-and-so made a point. That doesn't mean that that person wants to work with you in any capacity to try and, as Cenk put it, break us all from the prison. We're all in a prison and we're all prisoners, and there's some prisoners in there that are pretty bad people, okay? Some of them are Nazis, but we all got to break out together. All right, if we all break out together, then we can rebuild. And it's like, rebuild with the Nazis who you have just aligned with, who are now outside of the prison. What do you think their first goal is going to be when they're outside of the prison? Most likely realizing that everyone who isn't a white Christian straight man, of which unfortunately, Cenk does not fall under that category, should be in the prison. They want to build prisons. They want to put you in you. They want to build camps. They want to exterminate. That's their project. There's no point in being like, well, we'll go so far, and then when things are getting a little hairy, we'll realize who's going to shank who, and then maybe I'll shank him first. I'm gambling on that. Using like, this isn't the fucking movies. Like, for the love of fuck, stop looking at this like it's Prison Break season 2.
And Tucker and everybody is. Let's get to our disagreements after we win. So after we win, you go towards socialism. Whoever wants to go towards nationalism, go that way.
By the way, that's very Ezra Klein, because he says the same thing, right? All that matters is winning. If we can't win elections, across the board, we don't get to have as many seats, we don't get to form power, we don't get to form government. There's a truth to the fact that, yeah, you do ultimately need to have people in positions of power if you actually want to run government, because that's just how government works. But ultimately, if you are going down that road and pathway by selling out all of your beliefs along the way, then what exactly is winning to you? If you say put a whole bunch of people in red states and like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to allow people in red states who are Democrats to not have to actually advocate on the behalf of the human rights of women, on the human rights of black people, on the human rights of a whole bunch of different groups. But just so they win, and then we get that extra seat. And it's like, so you get a racist, woman-hating, I want to take away your bodily autonomy, force you to give birth, but they have a D in front of their name. Yeah, because, come us having to make a group vote, they'll participate. Will they? That strategy hasn't really been working out. It seems like the Kirsten Cinemas of the world, they kind of just do whatever the fuck they want when it's very advantageous to them. And if you're now adding, say, Marjorie Taylor Greene style people into that mix, but you're like, oh, but they are a Democrat in name only. It's like, what are you winning then? It's like, well, you have a plurality, or you want to vote, but you want to vote for someone whose beliefs are going to be against the things you want to fight for. Like human rights, like affordability, like people being able to actually have good lives.
We'll split up and we'll have beautiful arguments and debates and all of that stuff. But let's take down the prison guards first. The establishment are the prison guards. They're the maintainers of the corporate.
And Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes advocate on the behalf of the prison guards. It might not sound like that because at the time they're not standing there being like, hey, by the way, we should really take down all these corporate elites and all of these corporations that are destroying our way of life. It's the bourgeois decadence, I say. At the end of the day, they want to put you in prison. That's the whole project. Like, this metaphor, as simple as he wants to keep it, is so absurd to think that like a super, super rich, unbelievably wealthy, like comes from a family of wasps, unbelievably, like we're talking millionaires and billionaires, by the way, if you want to talk about Tucker Carlson. Do you think that he, at a certain point in his life, is going to be like, I want to liberate the lower classes? Yes, the unwashed, disgusting poors that I would not have in any proximity to. I don't even want to look at them. Ugh. But I want to advocate on their behalf and give them more power in society. I want to lift them up. I want them to have better quality of life. That's what he wants. He wants to have a bigger moat. He wants a bigger fence around his castle. He wants a second castle and maybe a third, getting to like Nicolas Cage levels. He wants to continue to perpetuate inequality in society because it keeps him in power. people who are advocating for the destruction of that system are not the same as the ones inside of the prison that you say are going to escape with you, because they're already outside of the prison, Cenk. That's the part he's not realizing. Tucker Carlson is not in prison with you. Nick Fuentes is not in a prison cell with you. These are multi-millionaires who have very big audiences, who have realized how to sell this kind of stuff to keep everyone in prison. That's what they do.
System. So let's knock that down first. Let's unleash populism on both sides, and then let's go have elections, and let's figure out what's more popular.
And a beer.
Let's have democracy.
I just don't. I think that historically speaking, given that socialism is an abolition and reconstruction of the capitalist hierarchy, whereas fascism is actually a mechanism of control to reassert the capitalist hierarchy. This exact dynamic that you're talking about has played out in the past, with fascists winning. When liberalism is failing and contradictions worsen, and people recognize that they're desperate for new alternatives. Most people, or not most people, but capital owners who still have their remaining crumb of power will then align themselves with fascists.
So I think that there are two paths to fascism that I want to avoid. And the way to avoid it is to fix the system. So number one path is people get so mad at the injustices of this current corrupt system that they go in the,
it's also wild. He can't name Trump anymore. Like, you can't even say, like, Donald Trump right now is running a fascistic government in the United States. He's being an authoritarian. He's waging a war on his own people. He has a Gestapo. He has a force that is actually taking non-white people off the streets and putting them into concentration camps. He's benefiting only the wealthy elites of the country. He's, like, merging the state and capital right now in the way fascists do in order to preserve, again, the capitalist system. But instead, it's just like, we're all in a prison. All of us. And then we have to break free together. And if that means, I grab Tucker Carlson's hand, Nick Fuentes' hand, and we just Naruto run at the guards, so be it. We'll break free.
Fuentes direction and beyond Fuentes, right? To whatever is beyond Fuentes. And so at that point, if that becomes popular enough because of suppression, and that's what's happening now, the Barry Weiss of the world are...
There's nothing beyond Fuentes, by the way. Like, there's a reason why fascism, it actually becomes that powerful. It eventually has to be destroyed. You can't have a whole bunch of white supremacists being like, yeah, we're going to put everyone who isn't pure in the camps and exterminate them all. That's our project, because we need to subjugate them, and then the women can be the birthing pods and the maids, and then clean the houses. We won.
Suppress. Don't let them breathe. Right?
A world beyond Fuentes, right?
And so they're helping Fuentes and beyond Fuentes more than they realize. So that's one path to fascism. The other path is the path we're on now. This is the establishment is the path to fascism. Because what's going to happen next is Palantir. Palantir tested all their technology in Gaza. Now Larry Ellison and the guys at Palantir are saying, we now know how to control a population. So they're going to bring that here. If populists on the right or left don't win, or some sort of combination don't win in 2028, then the Ellisons and the Peter Thiels and those guys, the Palantires, are going to turn this current establishment into a fascist establishment.
I think
do you see what I'm saying?
I think, well, one, I do see what you're saying. I think that we're already there in many ways. I think that the new iteration, like, the Republicans have already become a post-liberal party, and Donald Trump is doing that right now with the type of populism that you're talking about, with the sloppyism, if you will, where liberalism has been an abject failure, and that's the reason why one of the two major parties is basically evolving beyond, and the other...
It's fascism, by the way. The thing that you keep calling populism, being like, Trump's a populist. His MAGA base are populists. They care about populism. No. They clearly are completely fine with having a worse quality of life if it means that they're getting to see the people they have targeted as their enemies, aka immigrants, black and brown people, gay people, trans people, if they see them suffer more. That's more important to a lot of them than grocery food prices, inflation, the cost of housing, all this kind of stuff. You want to call it sloppyism, be my guest, but this is fascism. And ultimately the fact that he's saying, like, what we got to do is we just got to steer the ship, if we're barreling towards that outcome, don't worry, there's a couple other, courses we can take, and hopefully the horseshoe doesn't wrap around and we become the other thing.
Everyone is always in a consistent conciliatory or conceding tone towards the other party that is restructuring itself as a fascist one. And my point is that the normal evolution beyond that point would be Tucker Carlson. I don't think J.D. Vance is going to lead the Republican Party in the future.
I think Tucker Carlson.
I think it's going to be the Tucker Carlson that leads the party.
But I don't think.
But do you think Tucker Carlson is going to go in there and actually take out Palantir and
Yes.
corporate capital? I don't. I do not believe.
Yes. What? In what world? How many examples do you need at this point, by the way? What about people that dedicated their entire lives to warning the American public about the surveillance state? Taking Alex Jones. That was the sum total of his life's work when he wasn't actually like spreading, racist conspiracy theories, homosexual conspiracy theories, all this kind of stuff. He was advocating for the fact that there was going to be a large surveillance state, that the United States was going to collaborate with which powerful billionaire oligarchs, and they were going to use this surveillance state in order to track the general public and censor them. This was the shit he talked about all the time. And now it's here in the form of, yes, AI companies like Palantir, of Oracle, of all these companies that are basically selling this idea to the American public that, hey, by the way, we're going to be able to prevent terrorism if we just get to read all of your secrets. If we can just see what exactly you jerk off to, we will have the ability to prevent another 9/11 from happening. Give us all your data. We deserve it. Oh, we got it anyway. Who cares? We have it now, so we have your data. We got it all. And Alex Jones is their biggest champion. Oh, why do we always talk about Palantir? Palantir's fine, okay? It's just a small fry, little tiny baby fish in the pond. What we need to talk about is the deep state and how the demonic forces of Satan and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, well, it's okay. So he believes in nothing. He is now a cheerleader for the deep state. Great. So it kind of seems like a lot of these people are grifters. Do you think if Tucker Carlson got into a position of power, if he became the president of the United fucking States, then one of his first acts would be like, so I'm now going to start with heavy regulation, especially of the largest dominating forces of our stock market. Apparently, the tech industry currently makes up about 35% of the entire U.S. economy. So I'm going to regulate it heavily. So yeah, no more subsidies for you, Palantir. In fact, you're not allowed to use our data anymore. I'm shutting you down. Haha. Yep, that's right. That's what I believed in, and I'm following it, and everything's great. Thanks, Cenk. All of this has worked out so well already. All of his fucking post running for president, Trump is a fascist. I'm now, actually, I was wrong. He's not a fascist. He's a populist. And MAGA are not a fascist movement. They're a populist movement, and they will turn on him. Just see how fast it happens. Okay. He's giving billions and billions of dollars to the Israeli war machine while they're committing a genocide. He's not stopping that. He's actually just doing worse. He's accelerating the genocide right now. That doesn't seem very populist. It's not going to benefit Americans. You're going to have to pay a lot of money for all that. Now he wants to, oh, he's striking Iran. He's just firing missiles at him. Could provoke a war here, but he still wants war. Look at that. He's just blowing up Venezuelans, just blowing them up in the ocean. And now he's saying he wants to invade Venezuela and other countries as well. What? Oh, he's all over the place. He wants to go into Haiti. Wow. That's a lot of wars that he's cooking up right now. But MAGA won't stand for it, right? They're going, because they're populist. They're going to come forward and they're going to be like, we don't want this, and you can't do this right now.
Oh, no, those are two different things. Two different things. Palantir and corporate capital are different.
I don't think Tucker Carlson does that at all.
Look, I don't know. I can't speak for him at all. But to me, what you're describing, I don't think that the right-wing voters, best exemplified probably by Tucker Carlson, and we agree with that, right? That he's probably the best avatar for the right-wing voters, right? Is I don't think they're fascists. I don't think that they necessarily want to go towards fascism. I think they're populists. And so we can disagree about that.
I think right-wing populism is fascism.
Yeah, and you have been proven at this point completely wrong about that. Like, you don't have to keep doing this. Like, oh, I believe this. You can think something different. But, like, we'll find out who's right. We know. It's all happening, Cenk. You should know. You cover the news for a living. You understand you live in America.
Right-wing populism is fascism in the most
it doesn't have to be at all
historically,
and you don't even know if they're right.
Why? What's the difference?
But also, like, historically, he's setting all the same precedents. It's like, hey, should the centrists and the liberals align with this because they prefer to preserve capital instead of perhaps, more equality, more egalitarian systems, one in which maybe the workers own the means of production. They can actually own the factories themselves. They can actually be cooperatively run by the very workers who build the widgets in the factories. Nope, they're siding with the fascists because the bosses who control the capital want to keep being the bosses. Even if they're state controlled and even if they're overseen by the state, they still want to be able to collect all the monies. And okay, well, here we are.
So then Tucker Carlson's a socialist.
So look here. I'll give
He
you
believes
one.
in free healthcare. He believes in Medicare for all. He believes in everyone being able to afford a home.
No. You don't. Your two options aren't fascist and socialist. Those are not your only options.
Okay, what's the option for Tucker? What does he want?
So, for example, Marjorie Taylor
third
Greene.
thing.
So she gets untethered from corporate PACs, right? So all of a sudden, Epstein, Israel. But then our audience asked her. This is real. Asked her.
Matt Gaetz. That one actually makes it a little bit more complicated. If you think that Marjorie Taylor Greene has principles and cares about things like child abuse, but then also campaigns with Matt Gaetz, that doesn't really sit well, does it?
To support Ro Khanna's bill on lower drug prices, and all of a sudden she supports the bill on lower drug prices. Okay, so and then what does she do? She's like, wait, the healthcare premium shouldn't double, right? So she's now was headed in that direction ideologically.
And now she's retired
in that direction. No, I got you. But so that's not a person that was secretly fascist. That was not secretly heading in a fascist direction. The more she opened her eyes to populism, the more she realized we agreed, right?
She spent half her time giving speeches about trans people. She was obsessed. Every single time you're like, well, I mean, she may have voted for something that I agree with. Yep. So what's she doing on the floor right now? Well, that's why the trans agenda is trying to trans all our children, and they're trying to put the chemical castration in the water so they can get rid of the penises. We need to stop them all. It's like, that's all I ever hear out of her whenever she has a platform or a floor. She's not there being like, income inequality is really bad. Yeah, I actually feel like workers are getting fucked over, and we should really start talking about the working class and getting them better healthcare, getting better worker protections, giving people more parental leave, more sick leave, stuff like that. Ultimately, it really feels like this capitalist machine is destroying the average person's ability to succeed in our current system. Yep, that's what I'm about.
So instead of saying, no, I think you're a secret fascist and I'm going to hate you, what my point is, wait, maybe we should open our eyes together and go, oh, we have a common enemy. The common enemy is the establishment. Let's go get those sons of bitches.
I think the common
and then
enemy
we'll have a democracy, and then we'll see, well, do people want to go right or left? And they don't have to go all the way to socialist, and they don't have to go all the way to fascist. They could find a nice place somewhere on the spectrum that is right for America.
Yeah, I guess I don't have the same level of confidence that you do in any politician, really, because it's not like I have this degree of confidence in even Democrats, really, but I certainly do not have that for, like, the healthy skepticism and scrutiny that I have for Democrats is even twofold, if not tenfold, for Republicans who have spent their entire political careers harming the working poor.
So let me ask you the last question. So I want someone on the populist left to win, Ro Khanna, Jon Stewart, someone along those lines, right? Mm-hmm. I don't want Tucker and Marjorie Taylor Greene to win. They're on the right. So we don't agree on a whole bunch of stuff, and some of the stuff that's really important.
Like
right?
Marjorie Taylor Greene is like, oh, why are we funding Ukraine or Israel? We should be bombing Mexico instead. I think that's ridiculous.
So we can get into all that, but my
and that's
question
not
to you,
like a minor disagreement is what I'm saying. I think
No,
that's
I
an
got you.
insane thing to say.
Okay, but if you had to pick between Tucker and Marco Rubio, right? Marco Rubio being more classic establishment uniparty.
I'm not voting for either. Like,
Jake would 100% pick Marge over Jasmine Crockett. Absolutely.
I'm putting a gun to your head, and you're going to decide
pull the
who's
trigger.
the president, Rubio or Tucker.
Pull the trigger. I'm dead anyway. Both will, if given the opportunity, both will end me, because this is no different than, like, well, gun to your head, establishment Democrat versus establishment Republican. They are both in the margins. The difference between Tucker Carlson and Marco Rubio on some issues might actually favor Tucker Carlson. Let's say he is genuine when he says, every American should own a house. What's going on? Maybe he is real about that and he wants to solve the housing crisis. Sure, that's good. But he might be more reactionary than Marco Rubio, at least in the way that he's talked about things when he saw his legacy Americans, and that we have 65 million immigrants that need to be deported, which happens to be the number of Mexicans and Latino people in this country, right? The Hispanic population in this country. So maybe he might be even more reactionary than Marco Rubio in terms of an initiative that designs concentration camps. So the surreal scenario that you're presenting is technically no different than the harm reduction voting narratives that the Democrats that push for as well.
Then what's the answer,
Just
brother?
vote.
The answer is you
And then also, that's not an argument. You can't just be like, okay, so if you're going to actually pick apart all of my arguments and beliefs and point out that they're kind of ridiculous, what's your solution? Do not align with Nazis for any reason. We'll start there. That one's pretty simple, right? Don't align with Nazis.
Continue organizing, you continue building external pressure mechanisms, whether it be the union.
But that's what's happening right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's pressuring Tucker to go towards us.
And you continue. Okay, good.
And then, Matt has a really good point. Activism is the answer. Yes. Like, there's a lot of things that I think sometimes people give, say, liberals or Democrats credit for in terms of human rights and be like, well, at this point, there was a bill that was passed that allowed for same-sex marriage. At this point, there was the Civil Rights Act. At this point, so there has been real political change that actually impacted the lives of people who were, again, marginalized in society. And it's like, those changes happened or got to that point because those marginalized people in society were fighting and dying to get recognition as human beings and to be treated as equal human beings on a stage in front of the eyes of the world. They stopped hiding. They stopped being in the closet. They started having, protests and riots and eventually parades to show the world, hey, we exist. We're normal. We just want to love each other. For the love of fuck, stop treating us as if we are somehow inherently evil or need to be arrested or need to be detained. And then when you get to the future where it's just like, hey, Hillary Clinton said that she's now in favor of same-sex marriage, it's because, it's polling better. That's why. In her particular political camp, it's more advantageous for her to suddenly pretend like she cares about human rights where she didn't before. She used to be this is a marriage between a man and a woman. It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. All right. And well, I do support gay people and their right to exist. I don't think that they should be put to death. I don't believe that they should have a right to love one another in some kind of matrimony sense that takes it away from the straights. And I don't want to do that to the straights. So fuck them. It's like, okay, well, she's changed. Did she change because of liberalism? Is that the reason she's moved on this issue?
And we keep fighting, and then we keep pushing Tucker further and further until he's running around saying he's a socialist. He still would be a nationalist socialist, but I think
no, the problem, super last thing. The problem is you're worried they're going to turn into fascists and you start.
They already are.
Hold on. They're worried that you're communist and you're going to.
You're trying to align with fascists. Nick Fuentes is a fascist. Like Jesus Christ. Oh, you're worried down the road they might do something a little fascist. No. They're there now. So I'm saying that's why there's no benefit to working with them at all. Yeah, they are the enemy, is what I'm trying to explain to you.
So much to our patrons for making this show possible. We could not fund it without you. And if you want to join, please check out patreon.com/theserfs to unlock bonus episodes, uncensored content, and all the good stuff. Thanks to Anna Loves Riley, Addercap, Bobby Lasers, Cheryl Alvarez, Comrade Junkie, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hegbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Political Papi, Preston Kroll, Quiet 185, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Cernicus, Stellar Gwyn, Sebastian Demmel, Tigwick, and Words Greenwood.